All right, friends, we are back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. It is Location Weekly. It's episode number 559, and we are recording on March the 8th. Brianna, how are you?
I am doing good. We had a little bit of a fake warm couple of days. We're back to the chilly and sunny cold today, but yeah, I'm doing good. Everybody's happy and healthy. Kids are back in school, and my oldest was out last week. She had to quarantine from international travel, which was a lot of fun. Everybody's back, no masks or optional masks, I should say. So yeah, like feeling very, 2018, 2019 right now. How about you?
Yeah, similar. I mean, Toronto's kind of like getting there now. Like the province dropped the vaccine passport, a week and a half ago, so we don't have that anymore. Masks are still required when you're not eating and drinking and so on. But most people, it's pretty lax on that at the moment. I would say, like, if you're going out anywhere. So yeah, it is kind of getting back to normal. I think the biggest change here is the downtown core, like the financial district, that's been a ghost town, like those big towers. It seems like the banks and so on, are bringing their employees back in shifts and so on, little by little. So I think life is slowly creeping back to where it was. We'll see. But obviously, the big thing for us this week here, and I'm sure you're seeing there, is inflation and gas prices and craziness, kind of falling out from the war that's going on in the Ukraine right now. And yeah, like our fuel prices have risen about 25 cents in the last week per liter here. So
Yep.
yeah.
Ours are definitely going up, but I just keep reminding myself, one, like I'm not going to complain about gas prices because I am safe. My family's safe. We're together, and we're not living in constant fear right now.
Yeah.
And so I will just not complain about that and just count my blessings for sure. But yes, it's a very like, it just, it's like, it's surreal that this is happening in our lifetime right now. And, we heard stories from grandparents and great grandparents, perhaps, who like served in different forces and battles and wars, but this is very, yeah, it's just like, this is happening. And to people that we know, like that
Yeah.
companies that we know of that are, based in the Ukraine, or people who have worked or lived there come from there. So it's just like, it's very
Yeah,
crazy.
it's just a tough thing to watch, right? And it's like something that, there wasn't really a conflict, right, that provoked this. Like it was, sort of one-sided, and that all these people are suffering. And, I think it's like 1.5 million people have already like left and migrated out. And that's huge. Like, right. I mean, it's like 5% of the population or something.
Yeah, and to not necessarily countries that are super well established in a way that is ready to take on,
Right.
a lot of people. I actually lived in neighboring Romania for a year between high school and college and served with a nonprofit there. So, I can't imagine all of these refugees coming in there because, I'm sure things have changed a lot in the many years that have passed, but it was not, a wealthy nation by any means. It was just, people were barely scraping by every month. And so just being able to take on more and more, those neighboring countries, it's like, there's definitely a lot of efforts I'm hearing about here. You can, I encourage you guys to all donate where you feel led to do so. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, well, we'll keep, praying and hoping for the best situation there possible. So, alrighty, let's turn on to our show then. So we have 4 stories as usual for this week, and a little bonus at the end that we'll cover off. But I'll let Aubriana start us.
All right. So we had spoken about Precisely and their acquisition of PlaceIQ just a couple of weeks ago, and now they have launched another new solution, and it's a new addition to a solution suite or product family, and it's called Property Graph. So this is being added into their Precisely Addresses product family. And basically, it's helping with efficiency to see relationships between data, related to different areas. So when you think about, a large building, perhaps you've got like the parcel, which is kind of that piece of land that the building sits on. And then you've got the actual, structure of the building that's there, perhaps. And then maybe you've got residence or office space or retail. So there can be lots of different areas that are within a building, within a parcel. So this is kind of helping and different points of interest. And this is helping all of those things correlate, identify together. And, organizations are spending a lot of time and money and effort trying to identify these relationships, how property relates to one another, how they identify certain things as maybe residential or commercial or both or mixed use. So, some of the applications they talked about here were like telecom, real estate, insurance, et cetera. So different areas that could be able to use this data, correlate it, have a better understanding. I know in my past role at Digital Envoy, we were looking a lot at the parcel data and having a better understanding of boundaries and what happens within those areas, specifically like more points of interest in public areas where people go, like audiences, like behavior in terms of, how much time people spend in different areas, and having a better understanding of that context and data could be really crucial. And you think of like real estate specifically, having an understanding of foot traffic might determine where you want to place, your next coffee shop or the Chick-fil-A or whatever. There's a lot of research that goes into that type of planning. So I think this is a very useful tool. It's, Precisely has such a large suite of products, and we've seen them, iterate and turn time and time again. But still, I think they're pretty true to what their core mission is, which is all about like location and data and context, and continuing to provide that in new and insightful ways. So, helping with that visualization, I think just is a natural progression. So yeah, I'm not like blown away by this, but I'm sure that their clients and, those who are consuming their products and visualization tools, that they'll be appreciative of having this like correlation and visualization tool at their fingertips.
Yeah, not a lot to add to that either. I think it's a strong offering, obviously, for an existing large client base that Precisely has, and obviously supported by the acquisition that we talked about some weeks ago. I do like the idea of at least from a branding perspective, property graph. We talk about other graphs within marketing and advertising in the agency world. So I think, from a branding perspective, I like it. Yeah, and I think, kind of bringing a tool set together with, visualization and understanding relationships between data points, points of interest and attributes of a property, makes sense, right? And I think on the one hand, historically, we've had, a lot of players in the, the geo space that are really focused on property and attribute, and a bunch of other players that have, focused more on kind of the movements between the POIs and things like that. So I think if you can unite those two things together and kind of bring a comprehensive set of tools around it, I think it makes a lot of sense. And as you pointed out, there's a large pre-existing client base that I think will benefit from this, especially real estate, public sector type of clients. So yeah, good stuff. All right, second story, moving over to Germany now. Two companies over there have teamed up to bring a new offering to the European market. Those companies are PlaceSense, which is one word, and Cenozon, which is Senozon, if you're trying to spell that and you're listening here. So they're going after real estate market, retail, out of home, and focusing on Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Yeah, so essentially they're combining sort of accurate GPS data, which is coming from the PlaceSense side of things, with Cenozon's mobility models, which includes everything from anonymized cellular phone network data to mobile SDK data and transportation data, and others, and then kind of bringing this together into united suite of tools that's focused on targeting multi-location businesses. So, restaurant chains, retail chains, real estate companies that have, more than one property. So again, nothing crazy innovative here. We see these types of partnerships all over the world, within the member base and outside, where you have one strong player in, sort of a certain type of data and another here, on the mobile side coming together, not unlike, in some ways, maybe at a smaller scale, what we just talked about, like, now in the case of Precisely, they did it with acquisition of PlaceIQ, but, kind of bringing those two types of data sets together into, one platform, I think makes sense. And I think especially now, as we were talking about at the top of the show about sort of things starting to open up and kind of COVID seems to be, behind us for now. The economy is trying to rebound. People are looking for data and insights to kind of fuel and drive, where to make investments. I think these types of things make a lot of sense. And both companies have some pretty large existing clients as well. Cenozon has clients like Neo Advertising, Top Farm, and VVG. And PlaceSense has, clients like Cushman Wakefield, big real estate, commercial real estate company, Nielsen, and Lidl, the retailer. So, I think bringing the two together in the combined portfolio, there's probably some interesting economies of scale there, from a combined offering.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add in terms of like the logistics of this. But I think what we're seeing here is a trend a little bit where we're seeing less of the location data being used maybe in the marketing and advertising sector and more of it being used in a less, perhaps what might be considered a less intrusive area where you're thinking about like the real estate planning, footfall traffic, in terms of like, city planning and things of that nature. So I don't know if it's just the shift that more and more there's less interest in investing in some of this data and these platforms from an advertising perspective, because of the sensitivity, because there's constantly privacy implications, legal implications, just it's like one story and a fear after the next, because that's what sells. Not because it's always true, but I think that is just like something to pay attention to as we continue to talk about these things that are happening.
Yeah, and then last comment, like, obviously they're targeting Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The German speaking markets in Germany in particular are obviously amongst the strictest when it comes to privacy and things like GDPR. So if they've got a platform that's proven working, compliant there, and they're bringing it together, I think it only makes for a stronger offering and better grasp of the market share from that perspective. So,
yep. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, actually, like a lot, from maybe physical real estate and data to maybe virtual. So going to Gucci has announced, they announced this on their Discord server, that they have purchased an undisclosed amount of land on the Sandbox. So if you're not familiar with what the Sandbox is, it's a digital platform. It allows people to, organizations, brands, to buy and develop this virtual real estate. So Gucci is planning on creating this interactive fashion experience within, it's part of kind of like their Gucci Vault, which is like their umbrella term that they're using for their metaverse related projects. So, we have seen over time, there's been a handful of brands I think that we've seen that are couture, very like high fashion houses that have been getting into more of like the digital space, whether that's just through more experiential, experiential things that are happening inside their store with QR codes, but also here now with this virtual world. So they're also using that, the Gucci Vault umbrella and the metaverse related projects to sell some of their vintage pieces. So they have like a collection with there's also other emerging designers that are doing the same. But this virtual world is going to really be inspired by their creative director, Alessandro Michel. And that's going to be inspired by childhood memories. of the search for beauty. So very, interesting. Sounds very ethereal. It's also going to have this like interactive maze, a space to host conversations about fashion and the metaverse. And they also, are just doing a bunch of different things. So they did this with the creative agency Al Dente, which I guess has worked with a lot of luxury brands in setting up kind of these sandbox virtual real estate places. But we again, like Gucci's been an early adopter. We've seen them get involved in the digital fashion space, the NFTs, and I'm very intrigued with all of this. I think this is super interesting. They just did a partnership with Super Plastic that released a collection of 500 NFTs called Super Gucci. So there was like a 3-part drop. So it came with these like physical ceramic sculptures, and they were each priced at 1.5 Ethereum, which is approximately just a little less than 4K US dollars. So, it's just like there's all of this, stuff that's happening. That's this really interesting blend of digital and physical, whether that's fashion and NFTs or sports and, this digital real estate. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future, but we just saw an announcement with the Braves getting into the metaverse, as the first Major League Baseball team. So there's a lot that's happening, and it's very interesting to think of something that has always been tangible, such as fashion and clothing, being blended in this very, metaverse space that is not tangible necessarily, but just kind of blending those two together. And I think Gucci is a really, they're a leader in the space. I'm very, very interested. Like, I want to know who else is there that's doing that, because I love the idea of that art and science blend together. So, my question always comes back to, how does this maybe lend to more business and more growth? But I think it's really more about brand recognition and being able to have that experience with a brand in different types of environments. So, for some, it may be a very straightforward thing, such as like I walk into the Gucci store, or I go to the baseball game, or I watch it on television, right? But now they're reaching that younger generation. They are blending things together where they're bringing in something that, has been a very traditional experience into this very untraditional world. So I love it. Like, I want to see where all of this goes. I want to explore more on it. But I think it's like it's intriguing, but it's also a great opportunity for businesses to think beyond the way that they've done things for so long.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to watch, how quickly this metaverse, movement is happening, right? And I think, you on the one hand you have, sort of the operators like Sandbox and others that are setting up, real estate and selling, virtual property and things like that. And then you have the brands that are starting to engage and, try to find their way into that environment. And it's not cheap, right? I mean, like there was a guy here in Toronto. There was a story in the local Toronto newspaper a few weeks ago, who, has a pretty extensive, like, physical real estate portfolio, owns many houses and apartment buildings and whatever. And he sold a property here in Toronto for like $2.5 million, like in real cash, so that he could buy a $2.5 million property in the metaverse. Right? Like, I mean, to me, that's a lot of money, right? But people are dropping mega dollars, right, to buy property in this virtual world. And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of, what the what the brand, like, to your point, I think right now it's brand engagement, right? It's exposure, it's branding, it's, can we create virtual goods in there that we can sell, that people are going to buy, and what does that look like? And what's the currency, gonna operate as, and all those kinds of things, right? And then, but I also think, like, there's in one way, like, brands like Gucci make a ton of sense to me, because you have early days before the metaverse. Let's say you have, you used to be able to go into like a Gucci store, or Tommy Hilfiger store or whatever, and they would have like, the fashion show for this year, the Paris, runway show, come into this little store and put on these, glasses that, they have one pair and you can watch it virtually, right? And that was kind of like early days of, VR type of being transported to an experience, right? But now it's like we're talking about this as mainstream, or we're talking about this sort of existing all the time, 24/7, and you can go there whenever you want. It's not something that's an event anymore. Not that there won't be events in this environment, but I think it's about, how do we create a community around this? And the more I think about it, I'm like, when will it be that if and I don't think this is going anywhere. I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow at this point now. This isn't like a flash in the pan and it's done. So when will it be that like some baby's going to be born and the only thing that they will know is the metaverse? Like they won't know anything about the real world anymore. I don't know, but I mean that could be possible. We'll see. I'm not part of the metaverse generation.
It is the Matrix, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's here.
So anyhow, all right, final story now. So jumping back to Germany now, and we have two companies teaming up there again, this time to streamline airport check-ins. So these companies are called Qmetrix, which is one word with a letter Q, and Via Guide or Via Guide, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Qmetrix is Austrian, Via Guide is from Germany. And so what they've done is they've teamed up to kind of, solve a problem that, travelers deal with all the time, which is huge queues at, check-ins and security lineups at airports and all of that. And obviously we've talked about other solutions in the past on this show that have addressed this, with digital signage and beacons and other kinds of things. And so they're mashing up, machine learning AI software with sensors as well. But what's a little bit different about this and kind of unique about it is they've integrated that into the turnstile queue management system. So if you've ever been to one of these airports and you've gone through the check-ins, they have, those little, turnstile things with the ropes that go between them that you kind of, you can section off and then direct the traffic down this way and then come back this way and that way and so on, right? We've all done that. But how many times have you been to the airport where the line is short and you still have to go like this, with your luggage through the line because they haven't adjusted the, the setup of the ropes and so on. And so what they're doing here is that system is all digital and based on real-time data and AI that they're mashing up here. The systems and the queue management system and the lane management, if you will, automatically moves the belts and the floor posts and so on to adjust for whatever the current backlog or lack of traffic there is. So I like that because I think, if it's one thing to say, okay, hey, this line is shorter, but if you still have to go and like wield your suitcase through, 100 meters worth of, floor space when you could just go straight, like every little bit saves, especially when you're, if you're late and you're running to catch that flight and trying to, hit that gate and get through security, it all helps, right? So I think this is kind of interesting, and so I like that they've kind of tied their tech directly into feeding these smart barriers in this queuing system, and it swings open and closes the gates and directs the traffic accordingly, and can reconfigure itself. So I think it's really interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it's like so simple. It's such a simple problem to solve, but what a creative way of doing it. That doesn't require, like you said, waiting for somebody to come and like move all of those lines and those like little zip cords that they have to do and reattach, but just having something that's like automated and sensor driven it's like such a, I don't know. I'm curious, like, how did you think of this? Like you were just standing in line in an airport one day, you're like, oh, I'm tired of going through all these zigzags and there's nobody in front of me. I should just be able to walk straight up. Oh, I could solve that problem. But it's like such a simple thing. And I love that it is helpful, right? People, people will appreciate this every time you go to the airport or you're in one of those long lines, whether it's waiting for a concert or something like that. It makes a lot of sense. So it's good to just see like simple solves for real world problems, first world problems, I should say, like of waiting in a line.
Yeah, good stuff. Like I'm with you. Like the simplest problems are the best sometimes, right? Like it's just there's an inefficiency there, and we found a way to kind of just take technology that we have and make it a little bit better and make people's lives easier. And I always say, like if you're building something, it either has to save me time or it has to save me money, right? And this is this might be both in some ways, right? So I like it.
For sure.
All right. So that's our 4 stories. I did want to throw in just a quick little mention here at the end about good friends of ours and longtime LBMA members. So Gimbal, who we've talked about a lot, big location technology company who acquired and merged with Truex back in 2020. Has announced this week that they're rebranding the merged company as a new entity known as Infilion. That's INFILLION. And they say this is an acknowledgement of the infinite possibilities available to agencies and brands that the company serves. So, to me, this is, we'll have to talk to Matt and some of the people that we know over there, Ariana, to kind of get more insights on this. But my guess is that you have 2 fairly large, well-established companies here in Gimbal and Truex with big client bases, a lot of brands, a lot of agencies, thousands of brands, in fact, that they've been working with for a number of years, and if you're a Truex customer, Truex. If you're a Gimbal customer, Gimbal. And I think it's perhaps one of those things where, they needed a new brand identity to kind of, unite, the portfolio of products together under one banner and kind of go back out to their existing client bases and say, hey, we're just Infilion. Like let's not get confused. We're selling you Gimbal stuff or we're selling you Truex stuff, cross-pollinating there. But I don't have a lot to say about it, but I think it's interesting because you have 2, like I said, 2 very well established, very successful companies working together, growing very fast right now. They said I was reading that they had 32% year-over-year growth in 2021. So, and that's in the middle of COVID. So, obviously doing many things right.
Yep, for sure. Nothing much to add, but we will definitely catch up with Matt and friends and hear how things are going.
Yeah. All right. So that's our show for this week. You've been listening and watching episode number 559 of Location Weekly. Thank you so much for your time. Please reach out if you have story ideas or feedback. We'd love to connect with you, and we'll see you next week for another show. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.